We'll call a special called city council meeting Thursday, June 9th, order. Invocation given by Mr. Cameron, pledge of allegiance given by Mr. Wallingsford.
Almighty God, we give you thanks and praise for your great goodness towards us. We ask you to be with the members of the council and the mayor as they go about the public business this evening. Lead, guide, and direct them in all that they do. We ask you to be with the city employees, keep them safe in this hot weather that we're about to experience. These things we ask in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Phillips, will you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Wallingsford?
Here.
Mr. Gary Stewart?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Patrick Stewart?
Here. Before we adopt the agenda, I'd like to add reports to this agenda as well. So that being said, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? None will vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. We'll go to new business. First thing we have to do is set the rules aside. So do I have a motion to set the rules aside?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? None will vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, roll call vote on that.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wallingsford?
Yes.
Mr. Gary Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Patrick Stewart?
Yes. Passes. Set the rules aside. Next item is to consider the ordinance authorizing the issuance of the general obligation warrant series 2016 of the city. With that, do I have a motion to consider the ordinance?
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Wallingsford?
Yes.
Mr. Gary Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Patrick Stewart?
Yes. So the ordinance passes.
Just for informational purposes, Mr. President, can we go over the terms the final terms of the contract?
Absolutely, that was what my next response was to see if Mr. Ward would go over that with us.
I appreciate you coming into special session. Most of you know that from the time we sell bonds, we have a very strict limitation on the amount of time before we have to have the bond purchase agreement signed. So that is the reason for a special session. There is nothing peculiar or strange about it. It's securities laws that requires that you have the mayor sign the bond purchase agreement, which you all have just authorized. I'm very pleased to give a report tonight, and then with the permission of the president, I've asked to address the council about another matter very briefly after other things have been dealt with. We told you that we would do this for 3.23%, is that correct? And I guess y'all think markets move, but I guess y'all kind of want to hold us to that, right? We can't adjust this? Because we came in today, gentlemen, at 2.86. Your savings over the competitive loan, $316,699.35. This is why when you do a long-term fixed rate financing, it is essentially impossible for a bank to effectively compete. Banks hold on their books their debt. If you loan money for 2% for so long and CD rates go to 5% in 3 years, you're underwater immediately in your portfolio by 3%. So they generally do not do that. So we are particularly proud of this. that includes all cost of issuance that is net to the city of Scottsboro. What is the total amount that they're getting, Brad?
$3 million.
If any of you have any question about these numbers, I'll be glad to let Brad answer them. Brad has done a real good job with this, and it's obviously all that he is taking my place. He'll never be able to fill my shoes, but he's trying to take my place. And he's done a very good job, and he was merciless on our trading desk. He reminded me all the time, said, you know, this is Larry's hometown, and you better not have anything else in the week with a more attractive interest rate than Scottsboro. And they finally understand it. Mr. President, whenever you've completed the rest of the agenda, if I might have a few minutes, I'd be ever so appreciative.
Okay, thank you.
I just would like to point out also, I believe the last time we met, we were looking at a $2.87 million payback on that $3 million. Is that approximately accurate, Brad?
I think that's right.
And today, we're looking at a $2.76 million payback on a $3 million loan, so that also became more attractive.
So that's part of the overall savings.
During the process. And Mr. Kimmer, again, just for informational purposes, if for some reason there are surplus funds in this package, those can be used for other capital projects that are capital improvement based.
Yes, sir, I believe so. If you look at the ordinance under the findings are for various public capital improvements in the city, including without limitation, the listing of those particular and specific items that are named here. Also, please note that once the architect and the appropriate authorized city representatives notify the trustee that the jobs under the bond issue are completed, under the last page of the ordinance, there's a notification where the mayor would notify. If you wanted to use, say, had $100,000 left over, it would go into the warrant fund automatically, I'll notice, but if you wanted to use it for other capital purposes only, and I would say, even though it says without limitation, I would say in those departments mentioned here, I think you could.
Only requires resolution of council.
Again, I had researched that a little bit with Mr. Kimmer, but I wanted it said in public for purposes of our attendance here. Thank you.
Anything else? Now we'll go to reports, Mayor.
Yeah, just one thing. I don't know, some of you may have noticed the smoke coming from up on Maple Street the last few days, or maybe you've gotten phone calls, but Mr. Charlie Killow has been doing some work up there. He has purchased some property in Eddie Ray's old manufacturing plant up there, warehouse. He's cleared all that off, and he's really done a nice job up there. And he's actually opening up allowing people to come up there for a flea market on Saturdays. So we appreciate him improving that, because it's beginning to get grown up and unsightly, and so he's trying to turn it into a positive thing, and we appreciate him doing that. I think that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Washburn?
Yes, I supplied you with some information. I'd said at the work session the other night that before we made a decision on the cutting timber on Just One Island, I'd like to go out there and look around, which I did. I might have bit off a little more than what I realized there, but I'd like to publicly, and he's not here right now, but publicly thank Lynn Washington, the Alabama Forestry Commission representative for Jackson County. He was very cooperative with going out there with me. I've included there 2 emails from Mr. Washington. The first email, it's actually second in your stack, but the first email he sent me after looking at the proposed maps that that Keller Logging has proposed cutting. He makes an observation that some of those look thin, and I had said the same thing. He, in that document, states that, and this week I've learned more about timber than I ever thought I'd need to know, but that you should have, after a thinning process, a 70 to 80 basal rating, which I didn't know what a basal rating was. I found out. He and I went out and took basal ratings of the areas that have been cut. We found an average of a 60 basal rating for those areas. That's 5 years after it had been cut. He made some observations. I'll leave you that information in that. This is on the agenda for Monday night. I think it needs to be postponed until the council can go over this information, and I would recommend that we ask Mr. Washington to attend the work session so he can give his input on this project. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Smith? Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I have one thing. I was wondering if we could get the mayor to give us an update on the ball fields, what's going to take place and kind of timeline we're looking at.
Now that we got the money for it?
Yeah.
That's a good question. The baseball season is over with. I think there is a camp down there. Was it this week or last week? This week. So Monday, the street department will begin the demolition of those fields, which will take about 2 to 3 weeks. And at that time, the architect will bring some field engineers in to survey what site work will have to be done. And then they'll have to, fix up the site plans. They already got a lot of the plans, I think, in place as far as what the fields to lay out in the concession stand, which would be the biggest thing. But with that in mind, hopefully they're searching for a March completion. So they're going to start next week, so if you want to look at it, you better get out there.
Well, when will we be able to see the drawings and everything?
When they give them to us, we haven't actually got the final drawings, but I'll make sure you all get a copy of it. Certainly will. And like I say, mostly it's going to be, you'll see the concession stands and then the scorekeepers and then the layout of the dugouts and those type of things. We'll get those to you. Patrick, if I could, there's one other thing. Monday night in your package will be a copy of we got a contract today from an engineering firm. We were looking at replacing the Parks Avenue Bridge, and you'll have an engineering contract for $20,000 from I believe it's Light Engineering, and so I appreciate that. If y'all put that on the agenda. If not, it's going to push back several weeks, and Mr. Cameron will look at it, and everyone will have a copy of the contract, and we will. The reason for just a little bit of a rush to get this contract approved so they can get work on it, because there's going to be some water and gas utilities lines that may have to be affected, and so Roy did not want to do that to affect the gas lines because there'd be customers at Maples and the hospital. So that's why we're trying to get that work done before winter. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Ward? Say something else?
I am about to discuss a matter with you that I have been very reluctant to raise for a long period of time. But it seems that every time we are engaged to do business with the city of Scottsboro, there's a very, very, very tiny segment that always raises their head and says they've always charged too much and the fees are too high, et cetera, et cetera. And I quite frankly have found it somewhat tiresome at this point in my career. We have never, ever, ever overcharged the city of Scottsboro. The mayor and some of you on the council received a letter some years ago with a chart that looks like this. These allegedly what we had charged Scottsboro, and these were what charged other cities. In making that up, whether it with malice aforethought or gross ignorance, the numbers are not apples to apples or oranges to oranges. Underwriters and bond counsel, and Mr. Kimball will bear this out, some bond counsel say cost of issuance. One of the issues that we had done for Scottsboro was a variable rate issue, and what this segment of people included in cost of issuance was insurance, letter of credit, bond counsel, rating, and everything else. And then on the other side would show that Fort Payne, and they would show only the underwriter's discount. When we immediately received this, we asked our auditing department and our compliance department to look at it. They found no issues. I do not ever want my compliance department to find an issue. We had our auditors go back and do a study which shows that Scottsboro has always been under the average cost of underwriting. So if you compare, honestly, underwriting fees to underwriting fees, Scottsboro has always been very, very low. I'm reluctant to raise this issue because my daddy always taught me that the more you stir a stink, the worse it smells. The younger guys in the office told me, he said, Larry, years ago you dealt with the council that you grew up with, graduated from high school with, and they knew you. You have new people now. And all I want to ask any one of you, if you have any question at all about whether Scottsboro has ever been overcharged, that you will set an appointment in Scottsboro and we will come with all the facts and figures to show you that it ain't so. That will enable you as council members, when you hear garbage, to say, no, my responsibility to my constituents has required me to study the issue. I have. We haven't been overcharged. Now, I thought it rather interesting that not long ago, somebody shared an email with me where they were supporting doing business with a local bank. That local bank happens to be my bank. That's where I do business. So I'm all for doing business with them. And there's a certain type of business they do that we don't do. There's a certain type of business we do and they don't do. They ended it with talking about how many people that bank employs in Jackson County. And that really rang a bell with me because I can remember when one of our banks was sold a few years ago and how many people lost their jobs and how many buildings are vacant yet because that bank was sold. Not to mention the decline in assets and wealth of the people that were stockholders in that bank. So, you know, it's a personal matter to me at this point. I appreciate y'all doing business with us. This is home. That ain't gonna change. I'm related to half of this town. The timber that Tony's talking about, my great-grandparents were buried on that island and had to be moved to Cedar Hill. I still have strong connections with the professional clubs, people in the supper club, in the churches. Tell me what's being told. And you, as a council member, have an obligation, plus I think the personal responsibility to know the truth. In fact, there was a time, I think, when they said we came, maybe I even bribed the councilman and said, God Almighty, I hate to think that, I didn't twist you. Thank you for listening. It matters to me. Get with Mr. Green and set up your appointment, and he will go over every one of those numbers. There are no surprises. There are no overcharges. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The only thing I had tonight, the mayor took it before I had a chance, was I went up there and looked to see what the burning was up there. And I had seen and spoken to Mr. Killo probably a month or so ago. He had told me what he was planning on doing, so he has made a huge impact up there, and it looks really good. So I appreciate you coming out tonight, Shannon, Mr. Stevens. Glad to have a motion to adjourn. A second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.